Good afternoon, everyone. We are going to get our meeting started, and I will turn the floor over to the Chairman of the Engineering Committee, Mr. Barrick. Mr. Barrick, could you give us a call to order, and we can go right into the agenda.
Call to order.
Hey, Rob.
Application.
Point the mic towards your.
Got it better that way?
Much better.
Okay, then. Once again, we are called to order, and we have applications and audits for review.
Sorry, do we need a roll call before we begin?
We can take one. We'll do so now. Starting with Mr. Heathcote.
I'm here. Here I am.
Mr. Campbell.
Here.
Mr. Barrick.
Here.
Mr. Bursai.
Here.
And Mr. King. Mr. King may join us by phone. So he said he was going to be late, but I don't know how late. So, all right, we have a physical quorum for this committee. And I believe we only have one application that's up for review. At least there's only one in the file. So that would be Chip Finley, who called for the review on Mr. Finley's application.
I'm here, but I don't know who called for my application to be reviewed.
1 second, Michael. I'm trying to get this pulled up. I'm sorry.
Have you all viewed Mr. Finley's application to the committee?
I mean, I may have, but
Since we last met, I have reviewed about 100, and I haven't asked for anyone to be discussed.
Okay. Do you all need to see Mr. Finley? I thought that this was used. These are usually sent through SharePoint.
It was not part of the information that I got.
Okay. So these are.
I don't mean to interrupt. He was when I pulled this file. He was reviewed in December 2020, and his application was disapproved because of a technology degree. If needed, I can email add the application and docs if necessary.
Hold on, Megan. I am pulling this up right now.
Okay.
These are usually transmitted through SharePoint, so I don't know where we broke down on that. Let's see. That's our fault. I'm going through his transcript right now, trying to see if I can find out. Yep, go ahead, Megan.
Let me see. Sorry. I'm pulling it up too. It's loading. So I see, so what I have here, I think Mr. Finley requested to attend because of his disapproval for his technology degree. He did write a waiver request letter to our board. I have that in front of me. I don't know if you guys want me to send that. I know sometimes we put them on the iPads, but not sure where the disconnect was there. But I have his completed application, his documents, along with the waiver request letter that he submitted in December of 2020.
Right. Okay. And I've got the sheet here. Mr. Campbell did disapprove, and
Bursai.
And so did Mr. Bursai. Okay.
I see one where I disapproved in January of 21.
All right. Well, here's what we're review request. Sorry about this, gentlemen.
Let me know when I can speak. This is Kip Finley.
Sure, Mr. Finley, are you simply requesting for a reevaluation since, or to check and see if, I mean,
No, I think at this point, I'm asking for a forum just to talk about why Tennessee doesn't allow a Bachelor of Technology program with given experience. There's 40 states plus District of Columbia allow them, and only 9 states that don't. And they're spread out throughout the country. And most of the ones that do have a Bachelor of Technology approved, they all have varying required amounts of experience. Some are 4 years, some are 8 years, like in New York. I had to wait 8 years before I could apply, even though I lived here. So I'm working in Tullahoma, and I can only do so much without a license. And so I wondered if there's been talk of changing it to allow a Bachelor of Technologies degree with some level of experience. I have 32 years of experience. So that's what I was asking for.
first side, did you?
Chair,
Go ahead.
you know,
So here's the issue. The law, as it stands today, does not allow that. And so no matter how we feel about it, or how sympathetic we are to your cause, we are not empowered to step outside of what the law will allow us to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess what I'm saying is there's really nothing we can do unless we change the law, and that we're trying to do that now, and we have things that are in process that have been in process for a year or 18 months. It's not going to happen very quickly.
Well, that's my plea was if you're a referring board to be able to change the law. That was me just putting in my 2 cents that I think you're missing out on a lot of good people that have Bachelor of Technologies degree. And we only have 2 calculus classes and 1 physics class different than a Bachelor of Science degree. So it just seems like you're missing out on a lot of potential people. So if you have the law changing and in process, that's great. If you don't, I just ask that you consider changing the law.
Duly noted. I am sympathetic to your plight. I have wrestled with this with the state of Tennessee going back 25 years, and we have had the opportunity to substitute master's degrees and other types of things, but we cannot accept under the current law a technology degree from a non-ABETted institution. And so that's where we are, and it is in process. And speaking for myself, you have a sympathetic ear, but at this point there's nothing we can do about it.
Okay, so my program was ABET accredited, but it's still a Bachelor of Technologies degree. Does that make any difference?
No.
Okay. All right, that's really what I wanted to do, is just be someone, a face you can put a name to that's looking to get a license in Tennessee. I'm going to have to hire an engineering consultant to do my re-subdivision in Tullahoma. I have a 215-acre planned community that I'm working on, but I can only go so far. So
I understand. And at one time, if you go back 40 years, Tennessee allowed the opportunity to get registered without a degree, with a number more years of experience, but that is no longer part of the law.
All right. Well, if you're sympathetic, I know you would try to do what you can do. So I guess
And let me,
Yeah, we are working with alternative, what we call alternative paths to licensure right now, and are having those discussions, and it just doesn't go very quickly.
right now, just this is Robert Campbell, so I'll just tell you right now that bill has been has a sponsor in the, I think, House and Senate, so it's an active bill in the state legislature right now. However, it does have to go through the legislative process, and whether it gets passed or not, it's up to that legislative process. I mean, it could get passed just like it's written, everything's great, and then you're eligible to be licensed at some time, assuming the governor would sign it. However, I don't know how familiar you are with the legislative process. It sometimes has different twists and turns that don't match exactly what has been introduced. So we're hopeful that it has very little twists and turns, but it's not a guarantee. So understand that that step has been taken, but we can't sit here today until they could defer action till next year. They could do all kinds of things they could kill it. There's a lot of different twists and turns, like I said, but we are trying to find other ways to bring talented people, capable people into our professional realm here in Tennessee, and I think there has been a disconnect on the engineering technology, and I think you would agree that I know experience is part of that, but there is an education component that some institutions have been sorely lacking on that as well. So we're trying to come up with the best solution to make sure that our citizens are taken care of. So we understand where you are.
Well, do you have a bill number for the Assembly and the Senate, just so I can follow it once in a while?
As a matter of fact, I do. It is Senate Bill 2479 by Lundberg, and it's House Bill 2627 by Crawford.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time. Hopefully it passes in the next year or so.
Thank you for bringing it to us, and I wish we could give you better news, but you do have a sympathetic ear. We have introduced or tried to introduce something to handle these types of situations, and stay tuned. Maybe it'll happen.
Okay, thank
Mr.
you.
Finley, Mr. Finley, this is Michael Schultz. I'm the executive director of the program. If I may, I just encourage you. You can reach out to your whoever your representative is and or senator and encourage them to support the bill. And outside of that, I would also say that you're free to check back with us at the board. You can call our the Architects and Engineers Board phone number or via email sometime over the summer to check on the status of the bill. That will be summertime, should be after the legislative session has ended.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Michael, where do we go?
That was our application for review. So I guess we don't have any applications for review. So this would take us to the any potential law, rule, or policy changes discussion. Anything you guys might want to discuss at this time? Robert's kind of already blown the active bill out of into the room. So if there's any discussion that needs to be had about that, we're free to talk.
I will apologize. Casey, I'm I'm assuming that you sent that out to everybody. How'd you get it?
Because I look stuff up on the internet.
I've always known you were special.
Yeah. You can go on the internet and you can go in there and go, here are all the bills. There's the one I want to look at, and we print it off. I've got it because I was going to compare it to what we had given to as our bill to make sure they matched.
I believe they took it word for word.
I think they did too, but I was going to read over it in my feeble attempt to do that because I'm the.
In order to avoid any violation of the Sunshine Law, could you make a copy of that available to Michael, and Michael, can you distribute it to the other engineering committee members?
You can find it on the internet, Al.
Well,
I know. Let's go through that. It's in your basement. I know the internet's in your basement, and I know it's on this the big box down there.
actually on a pole outside my house.
So okay.
I can send you a link. It'll be it'll be easier than printing it and handing it to you.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you so much for offering to give me the link. I appreciate that.
Do you mean it right now? Did you want it?
No.
Okay.
Tomorrow would be fine, or sometime next week, or in the coming weeks sometime.
All right. I'll print some. We'll get some copies printed tomorrow, and we can discuss them during the legislative update.
I do have a question about that. Normally, the Engineers' Day on the Hill is reserved for whatever it is, near the last Friday in February. I don't know when it is this year, Casey, but March 1st. So
it's on the internet too.
You're making a lot of assumptions.
Robert, if you're going to make a joke, lean into the microphone.
I just want Alton to hear. It's on March. It's on the internet too.
Okay, thank you. And I'm assuming, I don't know if they would request. I apologize. I'm addressing this to Casey, and I'd appreciate your comments on this. It would at some point a committee or subcommittee or whatever require information related to the proposed rules and the justification or rationale for introducing them as changes to the law?
Casey Anderson, Executive Director of ACEC Tennessee and the Tennessee Society of Professional Engineers. It's a lot. Because this is not an administration bill, I would assume that tomorrow you all will have to decide whether you're allowed to have a position on it or not, because that has changed over the last few years with a different administration. I will say that this bill is being carried by Senator Lundberg because it affects someone in his district. And John Crawford, Representative Crawford, is the House member. That person is also in Representative Crawford's district. I met with Chairman Crawford today. I am going to I certainly have heard enough of this conversation over the last 5 years that I understand the goals and the what's behind the bill. I have promised both of them that the engineers are fully supportive of the bill, that I'm going to put together some talking points, what the bill does, why it does those things, and we'll be meeting with everyone on the committees that will see the bill. It's going to go to, on the House side, it will go to the Business and Utilities Subcommittee, then to the Commerce Committee if it passes out of there to Commerce. From Commerce, it may end up in GovOps. I'm not sure, probably. On the Senate side, it'll go through the Commerce Committee. And we are having Engineers' Day on the Hill on Tuesday, March the 1st. Would love for you to attend. Whether you're attending on behalf of the board or not is not my bailiwick. That's yours. But it will be something that we are addressing and with as many people as we can that day. And it is a priority item for us. I will go ahead and tell you that there is some conversation, some confusion about the final part of the final text of that bill, which if you look in your phone, you can probably find right this very second. But the final section of that bill that deals with the landscape architects, I'm not sure that I have paid it. Frankly, I've probably been in the room, but have not paid attention to your discussions on the landscape architect piece of that bill, and would probably need some information to help explain that.
I would assume that would come from Blair.
I would assume so too, but I'm just, because it's not a board bill, the operations of the bill are now different because it's not being carried by the administration. So I don't know what, I'm sure Mr. Schultz can decide what you are permitted to and not permitted to, but it would sure be helpful if the engineering talking points, certainly this committee has spent enough time talking about that I understand those. And we are fully supportive of the bill and believe that it's important.
Thank you, Casey.
Well, Casey, if you could send the talking points over before the meetings.
Before this meeting?
No. Before the day on the Hill. That's what
Oh gosh, of course.
Right? Yeah, okay.
Plenty of people will see them.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
Happy to. The difference is that because it's not an administration bill, I don't know what the board is or isn't allowed to. From a sunshine perspective, I want to not,
Yeah,
there are rules about that.
We'll have by that time, Maria will be back, and we'll have her take a look at them just to make sure everything's good to go. I don't see any problem. I wouldn't foresee any problems about them talking about the bill. They spent a year working on it.
I would really appreciate if anyone upstairs is watching or out in the public who has authority over any of these issues. It'd be really helpful to have the backing of the board on the bill. I think would be a very powerful message that actually you all have been talking about this, and that was and we've talked about that in some of the meetings along the way. So I would really love it if the board was allowed to take a position on this bill. I think it would be extremely helpful.
Okay. I think we'll be able to have an answer for you on that sooner than you think. Any other new potential laws, rule changes that you all would like to discuss? I know I'm opening a can of worms right there, but
Michael, I think we've got enough law and rule changes to last us for a couple of days.
Good.
I don't know what was on the agenda, but the Southern Zone meeting, did we ever come to a conclusion on that?
That's on the agenda.
Okay, I don't have it here in front of me. So
no, there are two items that
if you had printed that off, there's only a piece of paper that you can actually.
I count on the internet, and the internet I can't get on still. So I'm just going to, chalk one up for your archaic generation, Alton.
Well played, sir. So I have on here the next two items are comedy MLE review sheets and NCES meeting, Oklahoma City. With the comedy and MLE review sheets, I know that we've had discussions about those in the past and trying to limit the flow. Mr. Barrick, you had facetious in an outward expression going, but I know you're not kidding. You guys probably have had about 100 or so reviews in the past week or two. So the question we have is when we're at a point where we could potentially send 20 on a sheet, would you all prefer to have that many on one sheet, or would you like to continue have them broken out into 10s?
I guess we can all speak for ourselves, but getting them in dribs and drabs is not helpful to me. I would just as soon get 50 of them on one pass and sit down and do it rather than go back and forth and do that. And if this is just me talking, but I know you may have some time deadline or something something that would say don't let this go 3 weeks or whatever. But I would rather send them out every Friday or send them out every other Friday. But limiting the number of emails and the number of places you got to go to find it would be helpful to me. You guys can speak.
No, I mean, I don't disagree. I tend to try to take, I mean, obviously if I've got an hour, I can do 10, right? If I've got to have more time to be able to do 30 or something. But I tend to, if I get 2 things of 10, I tend to kind of let those sit for a few days and maybe a week or 2, and then come in on a Saturday or something and just blow them out, or just stay over and blow. I prefer once I get 10, 20, whatever, and I'll go through 10, but I go through them and don't stop. So I'm like Mr. Barrick in that regard. Is I like to have, I don't like to do 1 or 2. I like to do, because you kind of get in a rhythm and that.
That's the word.
Okay, well, I mean, it is. I mean, you know what you're looking for, know where it's at. You kind of, but I'm okay with 10 if 10's all you got. But again, if you want to send 30, in my case, just know that, you got to have a little bit more of a block of time to go do it. And I always try to find that block of time to go do as many as I can in that, rather than go, I'm going to do 3 here and this 20 minutes and 3 here, this and 3. That just doesn't work. And I don't think it works too well for any of us. But anyway, that's my opinion.
I'd say my number's more like 15. And just the way I work, I'm fitting them in. And if I have a block of 30 to 50 or something, I know it would take me longer from the point it reaches my inbox to when I send it back. And I'm with 15, I can at least get the 15 back, and they can be handled then by the staff and letting people know, that sort of thing. I will do whatever, but it's just for me to find time to sit down and do more than 15 is not.
We'll get you warmed up to 20, starting at 15 then.
Okay.
Guys, if I could say something really briefly, if that's okay. I tried to use like the raise hand feature, and I have no idea what I'm doing. But so,
real quick, this is Megan Molesky, who was on our staff.
Okay.
yeah,
Hi, Megan.
Thank you.
Hey, Megan.
Hey, guys. So, what our main concern, because I'm trying to keep the regular reviews, the comedy reviews that I'm sending through SharePoint, I'm trying my best to keep those like to 15. I know I just sent you some out as of late with more, but what my main concern is right now are like the model law sheets that I send to you guys via email, and all you have to do is sign them. Our concern is that we're trying to license as many people as possible at one time without having to send multiple emails. And as of right now, I can only fit about 11 names on the list. But if I can make that a multi-page document, I could get more people licensed at once with lesser amounts of emails. So I guess that's my biggest thing, is asking if it's okay if we make it a multi-page document instead of a one-page document.
Megan, that's Robert Campbell. That's fine with me. I mean, those are usually, I pull them up and sign them. If I'm at my computer, it's about as quick as I get them, So
Okay.
If you want to make it 20 names and it's 10 on each sheet or something, with one signature block at the bottom, or I mean, it can be 2 as far as I'm concerned, because I just bring them up in Adobe, pull down my signature, and sign them. And that is one other quick thing, and I'll shut up after this. And I don't know how everybody else is, but if you can send them the signature sheets, the transmittal signatures, send them in Adobe.
Okay.
Because you have to go, if it's in Word, generally we have to go convert it to Adobe, because I think that's where most, if you're electronically signing them, that's where most of our signature stuff is.
Sure. I'll do that from now on, yeah.
Our previous answers, Robert's and Rob's and mine, were not about those model law.
So yours were about comedy.
Correct. They were about either comedy or exam applications. They're
both on the list here.
They were about applications. The model law thing is different answer, and I agree with Robert. That's pretty much the day it comes in, and
right.
Yes. If there's 3 pages with one signature instead of 1 page each, that'd be great.
Great. But we'll bump the comity to 15, and we'll go multi-page on the model law where applicable.
Thank you, guys.
I can do 20 if that. I don't want to be the stick in the mud.
No, if Mr. Barrett gets tired of doing 15, he'll let me know, and then I'll let you know.
Sure.
Okay, well, thank you all for that, gentlemen. That should help us actually with our licensing time as well. That's one of our metrics that we get measured on. So anything to speed up those processes we have is very helpful. So appreciate that. Now, are you ready to move on to the NCEES meeting?
Yes, sir.
Yes, but and also one quick thing, and I know this is going to mess up Rob's record, but can we talk just a little bit about comedy applications and experience on those? So one of the things with NCEES is they'll do a review, and it will not show supervision, not experience. I'm sorry, not supervision. But then when you start looking through their references, and some of these are people that have 20 years plus experience, you start looking through the references and you start seeing handwritten supervisory experience that NCEES is not crediting. I give them credit for that. But we look at the sheet that you write, and underneath it says, 1 year experience under a PE or whatever. But then you start looking down the list, and I don't know if it's not making it into the NCEES record or it's pre-NCEES record, but we'll see a lot of supervising experience on that individual. It's just not later in their career. But Rick, I
agree. I think the NCEES form must ask the reference if they were directly supervise a person or what was their role, and a lot of them put coworker, and because they don't, I guess because that's the way a lot of engineering organizations function. But then it shows no experience under a PE. But when you're working in especially there are a lot that show no experience under PE, and they're working for a consulting firm
20
that's
years.
producing stamp drawings. Somebody's looking at that person's work and has direct charge of changing and teaching and all that. So it's happening. So I think it's the way it's asked. It must be the way it's asked with the NCEES reference form. And so I do exactly like what you've done. If I read in their experience or the reference description, and I know somebody had to have looked over what that person did, I kind of don't worry about the 0 years under PE or 1 or 2 years. I agree.
But that's something that sometimes if you guys get our applications back and you see that it's at, NCEES has 0, we try to go back in the forms and see what they had from their references. And that might be something, as you look through those applications, just kind of scan down them, because a lot of times they'll have, which may kick them into a model law, because that may be the thing that's keeping them from model law, right? Is you look down and you go, well, NCEES had 0 years of supervising, PE supervising experience. But if you go down, 2 or 3 references, they've got somebody that was their supervisor for 10 years that was a PE. So don't stop at what NCEES says. Go further down into those references and see, and that may actually speed the process up, because they don't have to come to us for comedy app. They're model law at that point.
Sure, we can start doing that. I would ask a favor of you all. Next instance you see where something like that can be done, please kick it back and let us know.
Sure.
On the sheet we got this morning, there were 4 of them.
Like that.
Yeah, there's several. This happens pretty often. This is Megan. Sorry.
Yeah, and you go and you start looking. It says no experience under a PE or 1 year under a PE. And the guy's registered in 15 states, and he's been registered for 20 years. And my question is, why is that relevant? And he's been working for a professional engineering firm so I agree with Robert. It might help us all if that ended up being on one of the other sheets, because it does take a while to dig through those applications to figure out, whether or not this is relevant or not. And it is relevant if you're talking about somebody sitting for the exam for the first time.
Sure.
But in these comedy cases where I think there were 3 of them on there where the person had been registered at least 6 or 7 years and was registered in at least 6 states. And so for us to be digging through that to figure out whether or not there was something that was a red flag for us was probably not relevant.
I will, best we can. Occasionally, a couple of them might slip through, but y'all just give us a nice, gentle reminder.
Yeah, and that's fine. Again, that's the biggest thing that I think that I see on the reviews right now is that prior supervising experience. I think it seems to me that's the biggest thing that I see. So, other than that, everything else seems to be going good. And again, it's not a big deal for us to flip through and find it, but it would sure be easier if it was on that model. And in a lot of cases on that model, we'd have that turned around much quicker because you're waiting on our time to clear up before we go back and look at them. That's the only thing.
Great. Well,
all in the spirit of getting better in efficiency.
That's it.
Well, I'm with you.
That's it. And getting our total licensing time down. This is one of the
Improving your metrics. We can help with that.
Yeah, this is one of the department's leaders in licensing time. So anything we can shave helps us out.
Leaders in a good way or a bad way?
Let's just say the top is the bottom. It's we don't, but it's inherent, especially in these older versions of the application. We've got applications that are out 4 years and 5 years in some cases, right? So that adds. But once we take some steps, a couple of years ago, I believe there was, I want to say in 2015, there was some steps put in place to put in time stoppers to stop that clock, in the interim. So as we do that, and if the bill goes through, then you'll have the ability to test and gain experience at the same time. So everything we do just chops some time off. And as those older applications start phasing out, that number will start coming down automatically because of those new time stoppers. All right, who wants to go to Oklahoma City? Nobody.
I think we had already discussed who was going to go, but I think the question was, are we limited to that number? I read in the NCAAS's information that they pay for, I think, 3, but I think the question was, does a new board member being their first meeting, isn't that comped? And I don't think that counts against the 3 that NCAAS pays for. And also our MBA, is that part of the 3 or not? And there was the other question, I think, about our legal, whoever our legal representative was going, do they count against that 3 or not?
So the answers I was given on that is there's no first time discount, but that first timer could be one of the funded delegates. I am separate from the funded delegates, and as would be Maria if Maria goes. So that doesn't take anything away from the number. I believe the number's 2 2 funded delegates,
Plus the NBA.
plus the MBA, and potentially council. But we'll have to check on that. One of them, can't remember if it's NCES or NCARB, but one of them was, didn't do council. But Maria's in contact with the NCES as well, so we'll get that shaken out. But none of that counts against the 2 funded delegates. So there's that, and then our travel policy, the departmental travel policy, states that up to 3 members of any board can be funded by the board itself.
I mean, 5 could go.
Technically, yes.
So
2 funded.
2 would be funded by NCES, and 3 could be funded by the state.
Correct.
I would be in favor for anybody on this engineering committee who could go and has a own meeting. Zone meetings get into depth on some issues that will come up in the annual meeting, and so it almost could be argued it has more impact than the annual meeting. A lot of times the annual kind of work through and decided, but the zone meetings are, we can have some impact.
Sure. A little bit more presentation in the annual.
Yeah.
Okay, now remind me, I believe it's in the minutes, but I don't have them up in front of me. Remind me who the voting or the funded delegates were going to be.
Well, I think the meeting minutes, there was and I was going to say something about this tomorrow when the meeting minutes are voted on. There's a paragraph in here that says Southern Zone meeting that I think was about the NBA meeting that was in Greenville, South Carolina. I think the term was incorrectly used in
Yeah, there are some cosmetic changes to the minutes that we'll need to make. I noticed a couple of times, Mr. Burnside, that your name was misspelled. There 2 of the letters were transposed. I don't know if you caught that or not.
I'll answer to anything, but
I usually don't see misspellings in my name unless, because I'm just trying to train to see the first letter and know, oh, okay. But yeah, we've got those meeting minutes, and if tomorrow on the record you all would like to point those things out, we'll make sure to get them changed.
The meeting minutes about the Southern Zone. There was also a question about whether this MBA committee I'm on is some kind of separate funding by NCES. I don't know that I've ever heard that it is. I guess we should assume that it's not.
Again, I didn't ask that question, but they said you get 2 funded delegates.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think it was a little bit confusing, so that I thought, well, if we're going to talk about it, let's just decide here.
Yeah.
What we want to have happen.
Yeah, and Mr. King's not here. You can make him a delegate. All I need to know is who to fill out papers for.
I have a conflict, for what it's worth. I think reading Robert Campbell.
And that was the one that was, I think they were talking about the NBA meeting that has already happened.
Yeah, that one actually got changed to a virtual meeting.
I'm willing to go, and I probably should, being on this NBA committee, and I can. So,
If the NCAAS funds 2 and the state funds 3,
Yeah, I just need to know who the funded delegates are. That's all. That's all I'm asking. Everyone's going. I think that's kind of already been decided, but I just need to know who you want to be the delegates.
Funded, Steve and you.
that's fine.
All right, so just for the record, that was Stephen, Mr. King, and Mr. Burside, correct?
Will be the 2 funded delegates.
Yeah, which means I have to fill out extra paperwork for you all.
CAAS funded delegates. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rest of you are just attendees. You're not delegates, so to speak. You're just attending. Well, you all will go through. Mr. Campbell, your microphone doesn't appear to be picking
Could
up.
we get reimbursed later?
Yeah, you all will go, everyone will go through the normal travel authorization process, which we'll get on pretty close to immediately, because this isn't exactly a fast process. And then, it'll go from there. We'll have to submit the meeting agendas and all that sort of stuff, and we'll keep you posted on how that's going.
And are you planning on going, Michael?
Yes.
Okay. What about Maria? Will Maria be going?
Maria's up in the air at the moment, but because this is being paid for by the board, we'll need the full board's permission tomorrow. So in tomorrow's meeting, I'll ask for permission from the board for both myself and Maria, as well as the 3 additional engineers. And with that, if there's any old business you all want to dig up, I'd encourage you to do it next meeting. Your microphone is still.
Here we go. We've had these discussions about again in the issue of timing of committees and meetings, and whether or not this could be done in one day, whether or not we need to meet 6 times a year. Do we need to have that discussion here and then go to the full board, or do we just need to discuss that with the full board?
We could realistically do it either way. I think that having everyone's input might be a little bit better instead of doing it twice. But there's a way that I think we could potentially have just one day of meetings instead of a half day and a half day, to where everyone would only need to take off one day of work. There'd still be the come in the evening, overnight, and meet in the morning and the afternoon. But given that would affect the entire board, I think that's a discussion best had with everybody around. But thank you for bringing that up and bringing it to the forefront again. Actually, I think I've got that on the agenda. Let me double check. Yeah, future committee meeting schedules is on the agenda.
Is there any further business that needs to come before this august body? Yes, sir.
I should report this, that we had a NCES MBA meeting, committee meeting last week, and the committee has charges of looking at position statements that have been written and model law changes and that sort of thing. And what we talked about was position statements, and one of them came to us as what used to be a rule, I guess a proposed model law rule about the BS plus 30. You know, that was a big push. How long ago?
Or 5 years.
I was going to say 10 years ago, but it's been a while, I think, since that's been discussed. That's, I think, died a death from all I can take in. In fact, is being pushed the other way. You know, they were pushing that you basically needed a master's to have enough education to be an engineer, and we're pushing back the other way now. And so this came to us to say, well, we ought to say this is a position statement this position statement's about the future of engineering qualifications. And when it came to the committee, we just said we disagree that's not the way it's going. and we don't think this is really a valid position statement to take now that, no, I don't think any states are looking at adding 30 hours to the qualifications desired. So it was rewritten, and I think Lance Kinney rewrote it as part of another committee, not the NBA committee. He's on another committee, and they always ask. There's two engineers on the NBA committee, and they always ask our opinion, like, what do you think the engineers are going to think about this? But Lance wrote, I think, spearheaded this, or at least his committee did, and he reported on it. He's changed the position statement to be something that's, and the position statement is just that. It's not a law. It's not a model law. It's not a rule, proposed rule. This is kind of what we think is the right direction. And the position statement, he changed it to write, technology degrees ought to be considered with everything else in with it, like how close like education and experience. It didn't try to pin down exactly how technology degrees, but a lot of it lined up with exactly what we've been talking about. Master's degrees, technology degrees, and other degrees that might give somebody or give a board the flexibility to look at the whole thing. And so this is, as you look at like the new areas of engineering, like, cars, the automobile industry and the IT world, there may be different things in the future than we're looking at now so all of it looked very reasonable to me, looked in line with what we have been talking about. And so I was a yay. I said, yes, this looks like a valid position statement. And we didn't try to quibble about every word and wordsmith it. It was just the broad direction that it's going, and I think it'll probably be maybe wordsmith up in the zone meetings and the annual meeting. But anyway, that I felt like I need to report that because felt like it was in line with what we've been doing. But I said yes to it.
I'd like to, for a sort of new guy, I'd like to ask a question regarding model law. Know what it is. What I don't know is what the obligations are of the states to follow it.
So and Alton and Robert can correct me or add to or whatever, but I don't think the states have any obligation to follow model law. It's there for our benefit. If we're thinking about adding a law or rewriting a law and it would help us to look at the model law, that's what it's, I think, there for. But I think in our dealings over the last year or two with the law changes we've been looking at, I kind of think, well, it's probably a little more than that. There's this weight if it's in the model law. And Tennessee is the only state that doesn't have in its law this thing that's in the model law, and there's some case in court. I don't know that it can't have some kind of weight beyond being a suggestion. That nobody knows. They would say, that depends on how some judge would rule or whatever. So I think it is a little more influence than just a suggestion, but I think as far as I know, it's always it doesn't have any obligation that we have to follow model law.
Ricky, even a step beyond that, and it's been a while since I've looked, but I think the majority of states have not adopted the, quote, model law. They have their own definitions and other information about how they think engineers should be educated, licensed, and behave.
I honestly don't.
I don't think any.
I don't know that any state has just adopted the model law as their laws.
Yeah.
I think that I know.
Some of them may have their own version of a model law, but not necessarily the one that NCAAS has
That one.
drafted and recommended.
Right.
So that
It's a
that's
guideline.
It's a guideline, and
Okay.
we've adopted. But keep in mind, it really comes down to: is it a state's right or is it an? I mean, if you had if everybody adopted the model law, basically you would have federal licensure, because every state would be exactly the same. So all states have taken the position that licensure is a state's right or a state's obligation to do that, and we've not for good reason.
Like, for example, if you look at the variation in methodologies for allowing that alternative path to licensure for engineering and technology degrees, they're all over the place.
It's good information, and hopefully, Rob, some of those things you as you look at it, go, that makes some sense for us to do, and a lot of other states are doing it, but it's not on us to do it.
I'm assuming if we did want to change it, that it would be some action to help us make the case.
Yeah, if you go in and say, hey, the model law says this, and we know that 48 other states are doing it, then that helps, right? But you're going to find that's not always the case. It's usually about half.
Thank you for taking a little time to educate me. Is there any further business? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
And a second? We are done.
Thank you, gentlemen. For those of you which is listed to meet next, we are going to be on this link that's currently going, so it's going to be a continuous stream. We can take a 5 or 10 minute break if you like, or we can move right into the committee.
Hey, Michael, just a point of order. We didn't get introduced to a new person who I don't recognize.
I'm sorry. Sharita, I thought Sharita was with us for the last meeting that we had. This is Sharita Brown. She is new to the staff, new to you. She is right now she's doing whatever we need. We're in flux. Actually, Kara Evans is going to be leaving us to go work for another program. So we're kind of jumbling staff work assignments. You might see some names that you don't normally see. People are learning new things, and Sharita has been taking everything we throw at her in stride, much like the rest of the team has been. Eventually, Sharita will be doing a lot more of the administrative work here for the programs. And kind of, as I've couched it, kind of being a utility player, meaning she's going to learn enough about everything to be able to pitch in and help wherever she's needed.
Well, congratulations and thank you and welcome.
I don't know if congratulations is exactly the right word around here.
Run her off right away.
So what I'll propose right now, let's just take a 5-minute break. We'll pause the recording for 5 minutes. We'll come back and convene the definitions committee. That'll give you all time to either get a water or, if you have to, come sit out in the crowd to pick up your stuff. All right?
Is there anything beyond the definitions committee?
Outreach.
Anything beyond outreach?
Outreach is as far as you can reach.
See you later.
Okay, we're recording. So the question was asked if we had a quorum. We do not have a physical quorum, which would prohibit this body from making any recommendations today. However, I've just been informed by council that you, as chairman of this committee, do have the opportunity to appoint a temporary member who may or,
Steve King is now joining.
All right, Mr. King is with us. So, Mr. Parker, you do have the authority as chairman of this committee to appoint a temporary member to sit here in the room.
Okay, and is Mr. King in the room, or is he remote?
Mr. King is remote. In the room, available to you, you have Mr. Bursey and Mr. Heathcote.
Well, let's see. Mr. Heathcote, may I ask, thank you sitting on this committee meeting. Is that possible?
Okay, Mr. Heathcote appears to have agreed. No, the chair of this, Mr. Heathcote, the chair of this committee, has the authority to appoint temporary members. So in this case, he's appointed you. We now have a physical quorum in the room, which means this committee can make a recommendation. Mr. Parker?
All right, Blair. Yeah,
So you now know who to blame.
Okay.
Well,
before you get go ahead, Mr. Parker.
I figured that since Mr. Bursey will be preparing for tomorrow's meeting as chair, that maybe we'll be easy on him. How about that?
I think he appreciates that. I don't have to turn my head to know that.
Okay.
And if you
may I call this meeting to order?
You may, and I'll take a quick roll call.
Great.
Ms. Doss.
Here.
Mr. Heathcote.
I'm here.
Mr. Barrick.
Here.
Mr. King.
Here.
Mr. Parker.
Here.
Mr. Parker and Mr. King are both joining virtually. Mr. Wagster. Frank has not been able to join us. So, since Mr. Well, let me ask counsel real quick. Now that we have a physical quorum, it can be a voice vote, correct?
No, they wanted every time.
Okay, I'll repeat that.
Sorry, if someone is participating virtually, then all votes need to be by roll call vote.
Okay, thank you. We'll be doing all votes by roll call today.
Okay.
All right, so Mr. Parker, the roll has been taken and the meeting is yours.
Great, thank you. I apologize for not being there in person. It's a beautiful sunny day in Memphis, Tennessee, not a cloud in the sky, and not everybody has electricity. We're still, believe it or not, a week later, there are many of us in this city that do not have electricity at our homes and businesses, so I do apologize. So let's get the meeting started. This is the Definitions Committee, and we have definitions for all four disciplines, architecture, engineering, interior design, and landscape architecture in front of us. We received in our packet from the board the definitions, and then there's some edits or comments over to the side for each one. And what I thought we might do is each of our groups, each of our professions, as we go through these and just look at anything that, any kind of comments that you have, and then we'll just go through each one and any comments we have about each of the definitions, even though it may not be our own profession. And if that seems like a fair way to go, we'll just get started.
Mr. Parker, if I could interject just quickly, I would like to acknowledge a couple of guests. One, we have on the line teams, we have Mr. Don Baltimore and Ms. Ashley Cates, who are joining us from as representatives of professional societies, interior design, and architecture. And also, Maria is not with us at the moment, and nor will she be with us tomorrow as well. So Tony Glandorf from our legal department is here joining us today. Y'all take it easy on him, please.
Awesome. Well, welcome, everybody. We appreciate you being here. We sure do. So if we can just take this in order in which it was presented to us in our overall packet, and the practice of architecture definition. Let's see, Frank is not on the call. He's not present, correct?
That's correct.
And
So I believe we don't have a representative of the architectural profession present.
Okay, I will say that in separate document, we did receive comments from, I believe it was Tennessee AIA, which I thought were most helpful. Were very, very good, and we need to go through those at some point. But I'd like to start out just looking at the definitions that we have in front of us that were provided to us in our packet. Okay?
Yes, sir. And like I said, if you have questions about the comments, again, Ms. Cates from the AIA, Tennessee AIA, is on the line.
That's awesome. So just to kick this off, let me kick this off. As I go through all four definitions, and I look at, for example, the architecture definition. Now, I'm a landscape architect, and knowing what our definition is at this moment, in the architectural definition, under 1A, it says planning services include but are not limited to programming and planning. That appears to be a different planning than what in landscape architecture we define as community or regional planning. I'm assuming those are two different types of planning, correct? If it pleases the committee, I would. If Ashley is online and can add to this, I think it's perfectly fine for her to weigh in.
That's good. I was gonna say, as a non-architect, I'm not sure I could answer any of these questions for you.
Blair, I'm not particularly sure what y'all are looking at versus what I have. So,
Ashley, may I? Let's go back to your definition, okay? Your red lines or green lines or what have you. Okay. So look at the first page of Practice of Architecture.
Right.
Okay. And 1A, we're looking at the same document. You've just redlined yours.
Okay.
Okay. So under 1A, planning services include, but not limited to, programming and planning. And I'm planning as intended here is not community or regional planning, which in landscape architecture is very common.
Okay.
So my question is, I'm assuming these are two different types of planning, and I don't know that this is problematic, but I just wanted to throw that out there and discuss it with the committee.
Okay, yeah, with being that, I can ask Linda Marzialo and Valentina Cochran. We had a small group just look at this, just seeing. So I don't know if there's a way to maybe define the planning or how it could just be, I guess more defined. But I can talk to them and just see. I don't think it's a big problem.
In the definition of landscape architecture, we do intend to define planning, community and regional planning.
Okay.
And I'm sure Frank would have a comment on that as well. And then as I review all of these definitions, I noticed in the engineering definition there's a statement about incidental to the practice. And I wonder why I'm asking the committee, should we not include that with each of our definitions?
Well, this is Alton, and I can tell you why we have that in there, and it's to differentiate us from, I think most of that relates to surveying, and maybe to some extent architecture, but there are some elements that wouldn't necessarily be considered licensed land surveying or licensed architecture that we would have some knowledge, experience related to, that wouldn't affect public health, safety, and welfare by us conducting those practices. We recognize there are limitations on that, but there are some things that are just, for example, incidental. Like I would use the example that if we needed to locate a water valve somewhere out in somebody's water system, we would take a GPS unit, which is a piece of surveying equipment, out and use it to identify where that valve actually is. Well, that wouldn't require, for our purposes, a licensed surveyor to be able to seal a drawing, but it would be incidental to our practice.
Yes. Okay. So
hey,
I'm looking.
Gladys, it's Steve.
Hey, Steve.
Can you hear me? I was just going to say, maybe Alton wasn't in a previous meeting, but we had actually talked to Maria about crafting some language about incidental practice that we would suggest to be included in all the definitions. And the reason for that being that there is some overlap that the board has historically acknowledged and would be willing, I think the board would be willing for that to continue, and that's why we were suggesting that language that she had agreed to draft at some point.
And as I'm looking at the engineering definition, Steve, I like this statement. I'm in support of this statement. I'm looking under the engineering definition number 210. Let's see, 2D10, my bad, 2D10, where it states architecture and landscape architecture is incidental to the practice of engineering and which, and then further defines. I think that's a helpful statement. I like that idea. So the idea that all of our disciplines would include that makes good, solid sense to me. So I wonder if this is something that, I mean, we as a committee need to, I guess, make a recommendation whether or not that's something we're interested in. Ashley from the
agree with you, Blair.
Pardon me?
I just said I agree with you.
Okay. So we have the LA and engineering, saying that seems like a positive thing. Melanie?
I think it would be very good to include in all four of the definitions. And where it says licensee for interiors, it would be registrant.
Yes. Yes. And Ashley, even though you're not a voting member of this committee, do you see any problem with that on the architectural side?
Blair, I'm going to be honest. As a professional, I'm not an architect, and so I don't feel comfortable saying one way or the other.
I got you. Okay, I understand. Believe it.
I can find out for you if you want me to, but I'm sorry.
No, we do need to find that out, and we'll discuss that again with when Frank is around, or our next committee meeting, or what have you. But we do need to. We're really trying to push this along and move this further. So those were really my. I'm sorry, Ashley. Go ahead.
I'm making notes.
Thank you. Thank you. Didn't mean to step on you there. Those are my primary comments about the definitions. And then, at some point, if we wanted to get into looking at the red lines, the Tennessee AIA red lines and comments, we could certainly do that. But I'm curious what other committee members have thought when they went through all the definitions.
Blair, if I can speak about the interior design definition, I would like it. It's a good definition. I'm very pleased with it. I would like to have a discussion about adding common language once again, as adding there are statements within the architecture definition regarding coordinating project consultants. I would like to suggest that we include that language in the interior design definition. That is a very strong role that we play, and it would be specific to the consultants as they relate to the interior design component of the projects. So it could possibly read very similar or the same as what the statement is within the architecture definition. There is also construction administration, and it may be appropriate for us to say project administration includes, but is not limited to, evaluation of consultants to determine that the work is proceeding in accordance with the contract documents or the working drawings or contract documents. Needs to be, we need to figure out what the appropriate term for that relates back into the definition. And in our definition, we state that it's working drawings and specifications. Do you all have thoughts on that?
Just one, I think, like for engineers, there is a completely separate service. It doesn't involve design, but it involves the assurance that the design was followed in accordance with the design intent. And that's the construction phase services component. So, and I think project administration, that can also imply oversight of the project design. Is there some way to segregate it where you differentiate between design and construction? And I don't know.
I agree. We need to. That is a very good point, and it's administration of interior design services.
Are there contractors that perform, or who performs the implementation? Who takes the plans and specs that you provide and actually does the work that's associated with it?
It can be contractors. Contractors are included. Furniture dealerships are included. A number of subcontractors are involved. You will have your electricians, your mechanical, your MEP folks. Will the implementation of the MEP component of your plumber, your electrician, your mechanical.
So it could be something as simple as contractors and other entities engaged in the implementation of the plans and specifications.
Oh, that's perfect. We have that recorded, right? Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Implementation. Implementation is the word.
Okay. That seems to fit.
Okay.
Say that again.
Any additional thoughts, Melanie?
It's recorded somewhere.
Okay, good.
All right, any additional comments? Melanie, you good?
I'm good, thank you.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Are you driving? May I ask?
I am. I'm trying to keep on mute when I'm not speaking, so that takes me a minute to get back to you.
Okay. Didn't know if you had the opportunity to go through these definitions and have any comments regarding them.
Are we talking about the definitions as previously submitted or the red line version that AIA submitted?
Let's start with what was originally submitted, provided to us.
No, I don't think I have any further comments on what was submitted.
Okay. And since Alton is with us, Alton, do you have the opportunity to weigh in on this if you would like?
I do want to go back to one of the things you mentioned early, Blair, about the practice of architecture definition. You had a question about 1A, planning services include but are not limited to programming and planning.
Yes.
Were you thinking that you would like to see a further definition of what planning included, or would you, you wanted to also mention that, or services that are incidental to the practice of architecture?
Yes, more services incidental to the profession. Yes, the planning as the two definitions are written seem to be two different types of planning. Landscape architecture is going to define regional and community planning. But we also provide other types of planning, as I believe written here in the architectural definition. So I was really wanting more, pardon the pun here, more definition of what that meant.
Yeah, I wish Frank were here. I work with several architects, and I know their nomenclature for phases of work are kind of what Frank's got laid out here. Their programming phase is generally when they meet with the owner in the beginning and try to download all the information about what the functionality of their building needs to be. And then I think their planning component is like establishing some sort of a layout, floor plan, and building configuration that works with what their client wants to do. I mean, Frank could explain that a lot more eloquently and articulately than I just did, but I recognize both of those terms as typical and traditional language in the steps in the process that they go through with their design phase work.
If it pleases the committee, just a quick point, you all would be within the rights of the committee to make a full recommendation today. Or, you have options. You can recommend pending conversation with architects tomorrow in the committee presentation portion where the definitions are discussed. So you have that option available to you.
Yeah, that's kind of my point. I think probably without Frank here to defend this, I think they had a good rationale for why they included that specific language. If I recognize it, I'm sure they had a good reason for doing it, Blair, and I would recommend that we postpone any decision on acceptance of the definition for architecture or the practice of architecture until you've had a chance maybe to vet it with Frank and the other architects.
I like that idea. Thank you. Okay, that sounds good. So interior design has weighed in on the current definition and maybe some of Melanie's thoughts, and we've heard from the engineering side of things and the architectural side lightly. We really need to talk to Frank, I suppose. But I wonder if we don't shift over to the red line that Tennessee AIA has provided. I frankly think it's a very interesting and helpful document, so I wonder if we don't start there. And Steve is driving, and I know he has some comments on this. I wonder, Steve, you want to unmute and share some comments?
Sure. Thanks. First of all, I don't claim to have had enough time to fully digest, particularly the comments on the engineering definition. I guess what I would say that what bothered me initially was how much of it was stricken. And I admit I haven't had a chance to study it enough to determine if the reviewer just felt like we duplicated ourselves. So I do have that concern.
Okay. All right. And I think one of the biggest things you said was the opportunity, the time to digest it all. That's something I feel in really the same way. So, Alton, any comments?
Yeah, I would like to reiterate what Steve said. I know that we, the engineering committee had, 7 versions of this before we hit our final version, and legal counsel was with us as we were making some of these edits, and we engaged them in recommendations. And if something has been pared down or eliminated or restructured, I would really like to give Steve, who is sort of the father of a lot of this, working with Kathy Ware, the opportunity to review it and see what was modified. The other thing that I've got is on the copy that I have, there are highlighted areas, both of them related to teaching, and I was curious about it. It says need to confirm whether this states or not clear from last committee meeting. Steve, are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
I did see that in the red line, but I'm not sure what the comment was referring to as far as the last committee meeting. The engineering definition, so as it's listed in the NCAA law definition, has always included teaching at a 4-year engineering school as a part of the definition of engineer, or the practice of engineering. So I'm not real sure what that means.
Tony, since I'm grateful that you're here, do you know why that was highlighted and why? I'm assuming that's Maria.
I think the question came up. Does this mean that you need to be a registered engineer in order to teach in an engineering school? It implies that, and it's not, in fact, what's happening.
No.
And it's not going to happen, so we question whether or not it should be in there.
I think my intent for it to be there, Rob, was we obviously want to encourage as many engineering professors to become licensed as possible, and we have been willing to say that counts toward engineering experience. Not to say that every professor at an engineering school has to be licensed to be an instructor or a professor. So maybe there's a different way of saying that.
Well, I think the question becomes in all this, when we are defining what this is, we are either including or excluding something. And this isn't about encouraging. This is about what is the practice of engineering. And when we put it in here, it can be very easily construed to say, if you're not a registered professional, you can't teach in an engineering school.
I don't think that was the intent. I'd have to go back and look at the NCAA definition, the model law definition, to remind myself what it says. But I don't think that's the intent.
I know it wasn't the intent, but I think that's what the discussion was about. Is that what is that what this could be implied to say?
You're thinking this is a potential interpretation issue.
Well, you're defining what an engineer is. Okay, so if you put it in there, that's the practice of engineering.
Yeah, I see that. I understand that. I agree. That could
I see what you're saying.
And to that end, let me weigh in on this definition of planning. planning is a very broad term, and I think if we just put in all of these definitions about planning incidental to the practice of, that helps get to the regional and community planning that landscape architects do, and the planning around the building development that architects do versus what landscape architects do. But I think, we get into planning. There are people that are in the business of urban planning, and they are not registered, but they plan.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, I think that was Blair's point earlier, and I thought that's what you were leading to, Blair. Is instead of that language, or maybe in addition to that language, incorporate those services that are incidental to the practice of architecture.
I think it would take a couple of pages to define every incidental planning practice that we get involved in. So
I agree.
Yes, I agree. Good comments. Really good comments.
So, Steve,
Blair, one other thing on the teaching. I think we have something in the current Tennessee code related to that, and I don't recall exactly how it's written, but I don't think it's ever been interpreted to try to require every instructor at an engineering school to be licensed. It was merely a statement that is. I interpreted it as a part of engineering to be potentially credited as experience toward licensure, but we might ought to get the attorneys to tell us what it really means.
Yeah, so this is Tony Glandorf for Chief Counsel. Exactly.
Hey,
Hi there. Yeah, so to that latter point, yeah, so if you put teaching within this definition, then in order to teach, you would have to be registered you'd have to be a registrant. And so anyone who would not be a registrant at the time that this passes, they would be in violation. So everything in this definition needs to be, everything that you do within this definition is something you have to be registered for. If you do one piece of it, you're going to have to be registered to do it.
So what does the existing language in the Tennessee Code that talks about teaching, how is that interpreted?
Well, if you give me just a minute, I'll look that up, and then I can kind of weigh back in when I find that.
Okay.
Give me just.
Thank you.
So at best, we would probably alter that, if not eliminate it. Okay.
Yes.
Version 8.
Okay. So, any other section, any other comments regarding the AIA red lines?
I think the same thing, Melanie, applies to Blair, the planning aspect that you were talking about. As long as you attach the moniker incidental to the practice of landscape architecture, I think that's probably covered in yours too, right?
Yes. Yeah, I believe so.
This is Tony Glandorf again. I found that provision, I think, on the teaching. So under, it's 62.2.403, and it is referring to teaching experience. And it indicates that anyone who's has engineered, it counts as engineering experience, someone who conducts engineer teaching with full-time faculty status. So as of right now, the code is written in a way in which it is under the assumption that you can teach engineering without a license. So I would recommend we not include it in the definition because it would be in controversy to what the statute reads.
It can be used as gathering the experience necessary to get to a point where you can be licensed, but not required as a component of being a teacher at a university. Okay, that makes sense.
Yes.
So strike the teaching component.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I just wanted to make sure that we could count it toward this experience.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So any additional comments regarding the red lines?
None from me.
Blair, this is Ashley Kate. I was going to say the red lines, a lot of those, the committee, the red lines are just formatting, a lot of it. I mean, I think there may be a couple of comments, but a lot of them are just formatting. They suggested putting like the definitions, the top, and then a lot of the lines are like changing the font and all of that stuff. So
Exactly. Yeah.
So it looks like there's a lot of changes and there's not a lot. So
actually, I found the red lines helpful.
Okay.
But I think it's good for us all to go through and to read them and fully understand. I do, I see where there are lines that have been stricken to be removed, and I think those are, since we've all spent time defining our profession, it's very important for each of our disciplines to go through and understand and work through those things, see if we agree with them or not.
Totally. And I appreciate you all letting us provide just the feedback in general. So, thank you.
Well, like I said, I appreciate it. So, okay. So we've looked at the general definitions. We've looked at a red line set of definitions. I know that Tennessee ASLA has been provided these, and we don't yet have any comments back from them, but I do expect to have a few comments from them. So I hope to have that in the near future. But I wonder is that we take the comments that we've shared with each other and make sure, first and foremost, the next board meeting that we have ourselves an in-person work session, but we all come back with different changes that we think are acceptable, or we stand on our definitions and discuss these with Maria when she's back, and go in that direction. I don't know that we've actually made any definite decisions here, other than on the verbiage of the education or the teaching, And I do believe, from my perspective, I like the incidental practice statement, and I think that can be crafted in such a way it covers each of our disciplines. So that's my perspective on this, but I'd like to hear from the committee as well.
Blair, this is Melanie. I concur with that approach. And
I do think it's important to get Frank's input on everything we've talked about today. And so I think that if we continue this conversation but come back in with additional information and be prepared to discuss it at our next meeting, that will be most helpful. Steve, what do you think?
I think that sounds good. I think I'm good with the direction you're headed. I'm just not prepared to really weigh in pros or cons toward the red line version at this point, because I haven't had a chance to really do it justice.
I understand, and I think that us coming back at our next board meeting prepared, and it gives us all the opportunity to go through and look at the definitions, look at the red lines that are provided to each of us, and come back in ready to go, because I think, like like you all, I'm ready to get this zipped up as quickly as we can, but we certainly need to be thorough. So,
I agree.
okay, so Melanie, you're good with this approach. Steve, you're good with this approach. Alton?
Yeah, Blair, I am good with this approach. I do have one quick question, and maybe it's to Michael and Tony, and I apologize for not knowing this, but once these are finalized and everybody agrees on them, where will they appear? What are they part of some document? Are they going to be incorporated into the rules, or where will they go?
The process for this?
No, I'm sorry. The actual, once the definitions are all accepted and all the approvals are in place, ultimately, where do they reside?
Well, the rules in the state of Tennessee reside at the Secretary of State's website once they become effective. And that's after it's passed through the Government Ops Committee up at the legislature and it meets its effective date. Then they reside at the Secretary of State's website is where they're housed.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to access
Mine's more generic than that, I think, Tony. Will these become a component of the rules?
Yes.
Okay,
They
thank
will.
you.
They will be incorporated within the current rules. I think that's your question.
Yes,
Where will they go?
yes, it is.
They would go in each of those sections, and as we get closer to, once we get the language down, we will have a place for it to go.
Great, thank you. Thanks for that clarification.
You're welcome. And generally, there are definitions within your rules now, so we would include them in there. So,
Thank you. Blair, that's all I had.
Great, thank you. Is there any further business for the Definitions Committee? Seeing none, hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you all. Tony, thank you for being here, and Ashley and Don, we appreciate your input. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Blair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Blair.
We'll take a 5-minute break.
Thanks for stepping in, Alton.
You're welcome. I'm sorry for having comments.
All right,
We're glad you did.
We'll take a 5-minute committee. Thank you. All right, once again, we're recording. This is the meeting of the Outreach Committee. And Mr. King, you're the chairman, so I would ask you to give us a call to order. I will do a quick roll call, and then we'll get off and going.
Okay. First of all, Michael, let me ask you, would you prefer that someone live preside upon this committee meeting since I'm on the phone, or do you want me to continue doing the best I can by phone?
Well, actually, I think as chairman, you have the right to ask somebody in the room to lead the discussion for you. It makes no difference to me either way if you want to do that, or you want to continue to, or if you just want to chime in when you feel necessary. So that's completely your call.
Who is in the room?
We have Ms. Doss and Mr. Bursai.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, and if you would do a roll call and determine a quorum, and we'll proceed from there.
Okay, sure. If you like, I can run through the agenda, but we do only have just the one item, so it would be short on my part.
Okay.
But yeah, since you've called to order, I'll give a quick roll call. Mr. King.
Here.
Mr. Bursai.
Here.
Mr. Parker.
Here.
Ms. Doss.
Here.
Mr. Tibbs. Mr. Tibbs is absent today. All right, so, Mr. Chairman, the only item we have on the agenda for this meeting is outreach activities, I think is what it says officially, but I've lost. I've got so many PDFs open, I can't seem to find. Here we go. So many PDFs open, it's hard to find it. Yes, outreach activities, but if my memory serves me correct, we last left it to where members of this committee were going to kind of have a homework assignment of sorts and think about articles or brainstorm things that they wanted to put in other than the numbers that we would be supplying, the raw data that we would be supplying.
That's exactly my recollection, Michael. I think last meeting a couple of months ago, we threw out some ideas, and unfortunately, since I'm driving, I don't have that in front of me, but as my memory serves, we were talking about asking Melanie and one of the architects to write an article concerning the, I guess, the situation with interior architecture. So I guess, is that still a possibility?
Stephen, that would be a possibility.
Okay. Have you had an opportunity to talk to one of the architects about, seeing when that article might be ready so we can begin to plan what we want to publish in the summer?
I have not had conversations yet, but I can put together a schedule and an outline and have it ready, along with I think Frank was going to be the partner in that.
Okay.
And gather the information and start working on that.
That sounds good. And Michael, remind me what month was our goal to have this ready for review by department staff?
Steve, this is Ricky. My recollection is when we went through all the process that we were gearing towards August.
I think August was the publication of the newsletter. I was thinking there was, a couple of months before.
Well, in that case, we'd want ideally as much time as possible, just in case there needed to be edits, and kind of returning things back. But ideally, we would be looking at a final draft of the newsletter by the June meeting.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. A couple of months.
Yeah, we can. I mean, if it doesn't take long at all, we can be ready by the April meeting, which would be the next meeting. I mean, that's 2 months' time roughly. So it's really, when it comes to that aspect of the content, it's up to you all and how fast you can get it done.
Okay.
Because that, the data won't take as much scrutinization simply because it's data, and that's kind of easily verified. That our legal team and our communications team will need to go over any text provided that you all provide as board members, and just make sure that it's up to snuff.
Right. That's the part that I was referring to. That I was thinking there was some internal review, whether it's just department staff or legal staff. Any articles written would need to be reviewed. So I think we're thinking along the same line. And as I recall, the other thing that there could be a potential article on would be the anything that happened in the session related to any of our practices.
Sure thing. Yeah, I do remember that being discussed. We can obviously have a legislative update. I've got legislative update on the agenda for tomorrow, where depending on the session, it's pretty rare that a legislative session goes past May. It has happened, but it's pretty rare. So ideally, the legislative session will end in early to mid-May, and we could have a legislative report if needed. If there were, in this case, we do have a bill that's in the legislature, so there would be a need for a report this time around. But, there may be years where there's nothing proposed and we don't have any legislative updates, so it goes either way.
Okay. All right. And Ricky, was there an engineering topic that we had discussed?
I think we tossed out what we've been working on, which is definitions and alternative pathways, and I think seems like it's appropriate for a newsletter to kind of say what we have been working on and thinking about. But I understand we'd have to do that in a way that legally is acceptable to the department, since it's not anything that's happened yet. But yeah, I think, I would volunteer to write an article about this is what we've been working on, that it hadn't happened yet, but we're moving in the direction of having a definition and these alternate pathways. And, even if it doesn't happen this legislative session, it seems like, we're talking about it every meeting. These are public meetings. To not say that in a newsletter, I don't know, it just doesn't seem right to me.
Well, Ricky, you could write two versions of it like a politician. Have two speeches ready to go on election night.
Well, I would write it not even really based on the legislative effort and how it's going. I would write it to say, we have been looking at an engineering definition for 4 years, and how, maybe what the purpose is or what our thinking is. And we've been looking at alternative pathways along with the whole country for a number of years. And I wouldn't even get into what's happened legislatively. I would just say, this is kind of where things are pointing.
I may offer a suggestion to you as you write that or think about it. Since it is going to go through a review process, write what you want to write, and then we can always take it out. That seems to work better than guessing.
Sure.
So just write what you want to
write.
No,
I will definitely do that. No, I'll write. Yeah. No, that's a good suggestion. I'm going to say what I think is kind of appropriate, for what we've been doing. I think the newsletter is to let our registrants know what we've been working on, the ones who don't tune into our meetings, and so that'd be almost all of them. So
I think that's great. I think that's great, Ricky. And if there were to be this year or any other year some legislative action, once you had the article drafted, it would be pretty easy to make some changes about what happened.
That would be easy, or that would become the little legislative part that, the other part of the newsletter.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, is there anything else? So I appreciate, Ricky, you volunteering to do that. That's good. And then we've got the interior architecture potential article covered. Is there anything else you think we need to plan for at this point, or am I forgetting other discussions?
Yeah. One thing I don't think we've said that I think we said in the last meeting is the plan is to take the last newsletter we did and use that as a template and update it. And Michael, I think when we were in our last meeting, you thought that seemed like a reasonable path forward. Is that what you're thinking? We would take the last newsletter we did, I guess 2018 or whatever, and kind of just use that as our template for putting this together?
I think that'd be a great starting point rather than reinventing the wheel.
And we may be deleting things out of that, but it would be better than, I think that's what we talked about, better than starting from scratch.
I'm certainly good with that. We'll learn as we go. We might make some improvements down the road, but I think the important thing is to just get it back started. And I think we're making progress in that effort.
The other thing, go ahead, Michael. I'm sorry.
I'll have to find an old copy.
Okay, I think I found it on the website.
I'm on the. Yeah, I'm on it now. I don't see it.
Okay.
But there might be some digital copies of it somewhere. If not, we got a great comms team here and a great design guys. It shouldn't be too hard to put. What I'm getting at is they probably have a template already.
Okay.
That we could use. So, if in the event we can't find this or an old copy, I think everything's going to be okay.
Gotcha. Okay. And Steve, the only other thing I've got noted from last time is we just have such a problem or continuing problem with license renewal. People who don't intend to be late on their license renewal that we just want to make sure we've got a reminder in there in the newsletter for that.
Right.
But I wouldn't doubt that we've had that in past newsletters that we could kind of crib off of.
Well, that's certainly a good reminder because hardly a meeting goes by that we don't deal with that as a disciplinary issue.
Right.
Okay. Michael, is there anything else from your perspective?
No, sir.
Okay.
Well,
I don't have anything else.
Steve, is Blair on?
Yes, I'm on.
We're not trying to box Blair. We're not trying to box you out. You can write a little column about landscape architecture. We don't mean to be hogging all the inches in the newsletter.
That's okay. You're allowed to, but don't be surprised if I present something to you. Okay.
Gotcha.
I think that's a great idea. And sorry, Blair, I forgot about you since I can't see a screen and I'm not in the room. But I actually think a refresher to other disciplines other than landscape architecture about what you all do might be beneficial to many of our registrants.
Yeah, I think that would be healthy too. I agree.
But obviously open to whatever you might want to suggest.
Okay. Sounds good.
And if you want to work on something for this, we can decide as staff pulls everything together, how much room we have, and we could either use everything we've got or keep some for later.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. No, that sounds good to me.
Okay. All right, great. So Mr. Tibbs is not with us. So
that's correct.
We have to get his input later. Okay, I don't have anything else. I don't think, Michael, if you or the rest of the committee, so I guess I could entertain the motion to adjourn.
I'll move to that we adjourn.
I'll second.
Well, have a second.
Second.
There's a second. Okay. We are adjourned.
All right.
Thank you for
Stop
putting up with my own conversation.